After the disastrous 40-day war launched by President Trump on behalf of Israel, a ceasefire agreement was reached with economic restraints in the form of a naval blockade put in place against Iran. Since then, the US has launched attacks on Iranian targets near the Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf of Oman, a clear violation of the ceasefire. Iran responded by attacking US naval destroyers and ships using advanced weaponry composing of anti-ship ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones.
If there's no ceasefire, you're not going to have to know. You're just going to have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran.
Trump called this a laugh tap and claimed US destroyers received no damage. A lie. Seeing as the Pentagon is filled with yes-men that tell Trump whatever he wants to hear and purposely withhold information from him. Trump is unaware that the US is in no position to dictate to other nations, or that the US is low on missile stockpiles, or on the real extent of Iran's military power.
Unprecedented destruction. A CNN investigation discovering Iran has caused extensive damage to a majority of the U.S. military sites in the region. Precise Iranian missile and drone strikes, aided by sophisticated Chinese technology, hitting some of America's most crucial military assets in the Middle East. The extent of the damage unknown until now. Our Tamara Kablawi is out front.
Camp Buehring, Kuwait. American soldiers enjoying a karaoke night at one of the biggest U.S. military hubs in the Gulf. That was then. This is now. A once bustling American microcity in the desert, nearly empty and heavily damaged after a weeks-long barrage of Iranian missiles and drones. One of many U.S. military facilities in the oil-rich Arabian Peninsula, targeted by Iran even as the U.S. and Israel pummeled the Islamic Republic's large arsenal. So what impact have Iran's strikes had on America's footprint in the Middle East? A CNN investigation found evidence of unprecedented destruction. We can reveal that strikes damaged at least 16 U.S. installations across 8 countries. According to our analysis and sourcing, that's the majority of American military positions in the region, and some of them are virtually unusable now. A U.S. source familiar with the situation told us that they'd never seen anything like this at American bases, that these were rapid, targeted strikes using advanced technology. Iran's main targets? Multi-million-dollar aircraft, like this Boeing E-3 Sentry, which gave the U.S. a huge amount of visibility over the Gulf. It's out of production, and in today's money, it's worth nearly $500 million. Critical communications equipment. Look at these giant golf balls. They're known as radomes, and they protect satellite dishes vital for data transmission. In this base alone, Iran destroyed all but one of the radomes less than a month into the war. And crucially, radar systems. Highly sophisticated, expensive, difficult to replace, and critical to air defense. A second U.S. source, this one a congressional aide familiar with damage assessments, described these as the most cost-effective of the targets. Our radar systems, they said, are our most expensive and our most limited resource in the region.
With their control of the Strait of Hormuz and the U.S. blockade, Trump was left humiliated by the Iran war due to his lack of strategy that left egg on his face. It is his inability to stop Iran's nuclear program or their missile capabilities. But that has not stopped Trump from threatening more war in future or punishing the Iranian people, which will lead to the death of thousands, if enacted, with renewed attacks on Gulf nations. But Trump is demented enough to do it. Trump is a man of no empathy or conscience.
If anyone knows Donald's vicious side, it's his nephew, Fred Trump III. In 2020, you went to the Oval Office to ask your uncle, the president, for support as you were advocating for people with disabilities. How did that go?
He was very interested in what we had to say. When the meeting dispersed, I was called back in and I was greeted by Donald's familiar, "Hey pal, how's it going?" And I thanked him for sitting with us for 45 minutes. And he said, those people, the costs, they should just die. I'm just happy that none of the people in that office were there to hear that directly.
Those people, including your son.
Yes.
It's extraordinarily cruel, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. I don't know how anyone can muster up that kind of thought process and verbalize it.
I mean, where do you think that comes from? Is it that he doesn't see value in people that he perceives to be vulnerable or perhaps beneath him? Yeah,
Absolutely. That's what it is. He doesn't have empathy.
Is he capable of showing empathy?
Not that I have seen. He'll ask about William, sometimes, how's he doing? And one time when Lisa and I went to visit him in his office, he said, "What's with William? What caused this?" And Lisa said, "Oh, it's a genetic mutation." And his first response, "Not our genes."
Sadly, Fred's father died at the age of 42. But Donald's reaction was less than caring. He rallied his surviving 3 siblings to cut Fred and his sister Mary out of the Trump estate. Are you convinced that Donald was leading the charge with cutting you out of the will?
Absolutely. He was my trustee. He is supposed to make sure that my interests are taken care of. Yet he hatched a plan to steal money from Mary and I.
Despite the legal battle, Donald and his siblings did agree to set up a fund to cover William's medical costs. But Donald Trump still couldn't hide his disdain for his disabled relative. At one point, when William's medical fund was running low, you called your uncle to ask for help. What did he say?
His response was, "He doesn't recognize you, let him die, and move to Florida." To say about your grandnephew is still something I can't understand and maybe don't want to understand. So I just thought about it for a second. I said, "No, Donald, he does recognize me." And that was the end of that conversation.
He's the same man that ordered missile attacks on Menard School, killing hundreds of school children.
And I'm standing right in front of what used to be the Menard School for Girls here in Iran. 156 children under the age of 12 killed by US military airstrikes. A scene that is very difficult to comprehend. The gravity and the extent of this crime is difficult to describe in this report. What you will see behind you is many people standing around what has almost become a symbol of the aggression that these children that should have had a future no longer have because of the decision of somebody like the President, Donald Trump.
An embarrassment for his entire nation. A man with no humility.
You're not known to be a humble man, but I wonder.
I think I am actually humble. I think I'm much more humble than you would understand.
Nobody knows this stuff better than me.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do and income than I do.
Nobody knows more about construction than I do.
Nobody knows more about campaign finance than I do.
Nobody knows consultants better than me.
I know more about drones than anybody. Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly, than I do.
Nobody knows more about technology than me.
I know more about technology than anybody.
Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump.
I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
Nobody understands the press, but I think I understand them as well as anybody.
I mean, I know these people much better than you do.
I understand things. I comprehend very well, okay? Better than
I think almost anybody.
And by the way, who knew the other side of the picture better than me? I knew it.
I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too.
Nobody knows the system better than me.
Nobody knows politicians better than I do.
Nobody knows. Nobody's better.
Nobody's stronger. There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves it better than me.
Nobody loves the Bible more than I do.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do.
Nobody builds walls better than me.
Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. Nobody knows debt better than me.
Nobody even understands it but me.
Nobody can do it like me.
Which is why I alone can fix it. I have Ivy League education, smart guy.
I know words. I have the best words.
I mean, like, I'm a smart person.
A man that sees himself as a king and benevolent dictator.
President Trump is no stranger to self-aggrandizement, but that over-the-top self-promotion has recently hit new heights. According to The Atlantic, based on two sources, a Trump confidant has reportedly told the publication, quote, he's been talking recently about how he is the most powerful person to ever live. He wants to be remembered as the one who did things that other people couldn't do because of his sheer power and force of will. And Trump is certainly not being subtle about it. This week, a 15-foot gold statue of Trump, dubbed Don Colossus, was installed at his Miami golf course. And in July, the State Department is reportedly finalizing a plan to include Trump's photo in U.S. passports to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. Last night, in a Truth Social posting spree, Trump posted a photo of himself alongside the faces on Mount Rushmore.
They say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator.
They say he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator. But sometimes you need a dictator. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
Well, millions of Americans disagree with that, and they have marched in No King protests. But a new report suggests they may have been underestimating Trump's ambitions. The Atlantic reporting that Trump allies say he has begun thinking about himself less as a peer of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and more as an addition to the trifecta of great men, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte. All three of these men were literally emperors, not just kings. Trump suffering delusions of grandeur here. One Trump confidant telling The Atlantic he has been talking recently about how he is the most powerful person to ever live. Consciously or not, he is certainly emulating those emperors in at least one way. He is directing the U.S. Mint to produce coins with his face on them. Putting your own face on money is something that these other emperors also famously did.
I'll be honest, and this way, when I get out of office in, let's say, 8 or 9 years from now, I'll be able to use it. I'll be able to use it myself.
A man that evaded Iran in an act of aggression so as to distract the world from the fact that he's a pedophile, but then called that war self-defense. A man more than capable of starting another war with Iran, despite Iran recovering buried munitions to rebuild strike capacity and the ability to take American troops as prisoners in a potential war. Iran is fully prepared for another war with their troops on high morale, plus the majority of the population behind the new leader, with an orthodox means to win the potential coming war. Trump betrayed those that got him into power for the sake of Jewish billionaires and the Epstein cover-up. And even with Iran ready to negotiate and the ball being in the U.S. court, a sustained peace between Iran and the U.S. is unlikely. Trump had hoped the Kurds would act as ground troops to topple the Iranian regime, but that failed. And so a declaration of war with tens of thousands of U.S. ground troops would be needed to defeat Iran. But that is impossible in the current political climate, unless Trump uses a massive false flag operation to justify war with Iran. But that would drag Russia that has publicly backed Iran, as well as China, and maybe even North Korea, into the war. A war that would push Iran further to actually getting the bomb as a means of a deterrent, seeing as Israel has them already. A demented fool is running the US and is gambling with World War III.
Same sun rising, but we're living in hell, while the leaders are ringing the funeral bell. Love for the people, but the system must cease. From Tehran to DC, we're screaming for peace. Same sun rising, but we're living in hell, while the leaders are ringing the funeral bell. Love for the people, but the system must cease. From Tehran to DC, we're screaming for peace. Peace. Not for the leaders, but for the innocent souls, for the next in line.